The night was quiet, save for the chirping crickets, when Mama Femi sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the envelope her son had handed her earlier. It was thick with cash. Her hands trembled as she counted it. Femi had just returned from a weekend in Lagos, sporting new clothes and a phone she had never seen before. He looked different, confident, almost arrogant. "Femi, where is all this money coming from?" she had asked him earlier, her tone sharp with suspicion. "No job pays this much overnight." Femi had smiled dismissively. "Mama, stop worrying. God has blessed us." But Mama Femi wasn't convinced. She had thought her son right from wrong, and this sudden wealth didn't sit well with her. That night, as she knelt to pray, unease clawed at her heart. "God, if this wealth is not from you, let it not destroy my son." In the other room, Femi stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His mother's probing questions had unsettled him, but the money was too good to give up. With money in his pocket, Femi's life transformed. He was no longer the boy who avoided social gatherings out of embarrassment. Now, he was the center of attention. His friends multiplied overnight. They hailed him as Femi Benz because he always boasted about the car he planned to buy. Weekends were spent at bars, where Femi picked up the tab. "Omo, you too much," his friends would cheer as they raised their glasses. But not everyone was fooled. Mama Femi noticed how these friends never came around when Femi was home. "These people are only here for what they can get," she warned him. Femi waved her off. "Mama, you worry too much. These are my guys." Yet, deep down, Femi knew she was right, but the fear of loneliness kept him surrounded by them. The first sign of trouble came slowly. One by one, Femi's scams stopped working. The online victims he once manipulated grew smarter, and the money that once flowed so freely dried up. At first, he brushed it off. Just a dry spell, he told himself. But weeks turned into months, and his bank account dwindled. His so-called friends began to pull away. They stopped picking his calls and found excuses not to meet him. "Guy, I beg, I get one thing to sort," they would say, their voices dripping with fake sympathy. By the third month, Femi was alone. His house, once buzzing with noise and laughter, was now eerily quiet. The silence was unbearable. One evening, as Femi walked the empty streets of his neighborhood, he bumped into Deji, his old mentor in the Yahoo world. Deji was still thriving, driving a new car and flashing his wealth. Femi confided in him about his struggles. "Deji, I need help. Nothing is working anymore." Deji looked him over and smirked. "You need to visit Baba Ogunlana. He will set you up properly, but you have to be ready to pay the price." The words lingered in Femi's mind. Pay the price? What price? But desperation clouded his judgment. By the time he decided to visit the herbalist, he was already too far gone. That night, Femi sat at the table with his mother. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes and the way he avoided her gaze. "Femi, what's wrong?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nothing, Mama." But Mama Femi wasn't convinced. "Whatever it is, don't let the devil lead you astray," she said. Her words stung, but Femi dismissed them. She doesn't understand, he thought, his mind already made up. Baba Ogunlana's shrine was a place of fear and awe. The air was thick with the smell of incense, and the walls were adorned with strange markings. Femi sat before the herbalist trembling. "You want wealth?" Baba Ogunlana asked, his voice deep and commanding. "Yes, Baba." The herbalist smiled darkly. "The spirits demand a sacrifice, someone close to you, someone whose blood is pure." Femi's heart raced. "Who?" Baba Ogunlana's reply was cold and final. "Your mother." The days that followed were a torment. Femi avoided his mother, unable to look her in the eye. Memories of her sacrifices haunted him. He remembered the night she stayed up sewing, the time she went hungry so he could eat, and the prayers she said over him every day. But the fear of poverty gnawed at him. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "No wealth is worth losing your soul." Yet, the promise of riches was too strong. "Just this once," he whispered to himself. "She will never know." His mother's voice continued to echo in his mind, but he shut it out with his own voice. "I will use my mother for ritual. I will use my mother for ritual. I cannot continue in poverty. I cannot continue in poverty." Femi stared at his mother as she prepared their modest dinner. Her hands moved deftly, serving him with the same love she'd shown all his life. Guilt clawed at him, but he pushed it aside. Tonight was the night, and there was no turning back. "Mama," he began, forcing a smile, "I am going for a night vigil. They say this prophet prays for breakthroughs, and I need one now." Mama Femi looked at him with a mix of surprise and approval. "That's good, my son. There's nothing prayer cannot do. I will also be praying for you at home." As he left the house, his heart pounded. He had no intention of going to any vigil. Instead, he made his way to the edge of the forest, where Baba Ogunlana's shrine waited in eerie silence. The shrine was illuminated by flickering firelight when Femi arrived. Baba Ogunlana sat cross-legged, surrounded by strange symbols, drawn on the ground and objects Femi couldn't recognize. "Are you ready?" the herbalist asked, his voice low and menacing. Femi nodded, his throat dry. Baba Ogunlana began chanting in a language Femi didn't understand. His hands moved rhythmically over a calabash filled with blood-red liquid. Then came the moment Femi dreaded the most. Baba Ogunlana raised his voice and called out, "Spirits of the forest, spirits of wealth, accept this sacrifice, Mama Femi." At that exact moment, back at home, Mama Femi stirred awake. She felt a heavy weight on her chest, as though something was wrong. Her spirit was restless, and a voice whispered in her heart, "Wake up and pray." She obeyed immediately, dropping to her knees and praying fervently. "God, wherever my son is, cover him with your blood. Let no harm come near him or me." Her voice rose as she prayed in tongues, calling on heaven's power. At the shrine, the fire flickered violently. Baba Ogunlana paused, a frown creasing his face. "Something is wrong," he muttered. He resumed his chants, louder this time, his hands trembling slightly. Suddenly, the fire extinguished with a deafening hiss. The air grew icy, and the once bold herbalist stumbled. "No, this can't be," he shouted. Fear etched across his face. A gust of wind howled through the shrine, scattering the calabash and knocking over the candles. Femi began to scream uncontrollably, clutching his head. "What's happening? Baba, what's happening?" Baba Ogolana's voice trembled as he stammered. "Her spirit is too strong. She's protected by powers greater than mine." The symbols on the ground glowed briefly before vanishing, leaving the shrine in darkness. Baba Ogolana's once confident demeanor crumbled. "You didn't tell me your mother was a prayer warrior," he yelled, his fear palpable. Femi fell to the ground, reeling as his laughter turned into hysterical cries. His body convulsed and his voice changed, taking on a guttural tone. "You dare to sacrifice your own mother, foolish boy." Baba Ogunlana tried to flee, but the same invisible force that gripped Femi seemed to hold him in place. The walls in the shrine creaked as though the forest itself was rebelling against the ritual. Femi's cries grew louder, and suddenly he began to laugh, a maniacal, bone-chilling sound that echoed through the trees. His laughter turned to incoherent muttering as he stumbled out of the shrine, his eyes wild and unfocused. Baba Ogolana fell to his knees, muttering prayers to save himself from whatever power had intervened. But it was too late for Femi. His greed had opened a door he could no longer close. His madness was a punishment neither the spirit nor Baba Ogunlana could undo. The next morning, the entire village buzzed with news of Femi's madness. Whispers spread like wildfire as neighbors described the strange sights they had witnessed at dawn. Femi had been seen stumbling into the village barefoot, his once pristine designer clothes now torn and filthy. His words incomprehensible, and occasionally burst into fits of hysterical laughter that sent shivers down the spines of those nearby. At first, a few villagers approached him, hoping to help, but as Femi's behavior grew more erratic, they quickly backed away. He picked up a long stick and began swinging it wildly, chasing anyone who came too close. "Stay away!" he screamed, his voice hoarse. "They are watching me! The spirits are everywhere!" His laughter echoed down the streets, blending with the cries of frightened children who ran to hide. Not long ago, Femi had been the envy of the neighborhood, stalking around the words of cash and a sense of untouchable confidence. Now, he was a shadow of himself, wandering aimlessly through the village. He rummaged through dustbins for scraps of food, stuffing stale bread and rotten fruit into his mouth. "It's a feast," he declared to no one in particular, laughing hysterically as he chewed. Passers-by covered their noses and hurried past, unable to bear the stench of sweat and decay that clung to him. Women whispered to one another, "Is this not Femi Benz? The one who used to throw money around? See how he's ended up. God is truly watching." Even his former friends, the ones who had once flocked to his lavish parties, now avoided him like a plague. They crossed the streets when they saw him coming, pretending not to recognize him. Neighbors gathered in groups, their voices low but filled with curiosity and judgment. "I heard he tried to use his mother for rituals. That's why he's mad now. You can't escape the wrath of God. Serves him right. How can someone think of sacrificing their own mother?" The older women shook their heads in disapproval, while the younger ones stared at Femi with a mix of fear and pity. But amidst the gossip, there was something chilling about Femi's madness. His behavior seemed almost deliberate, as though he were haunted by unseen forces. At times, Femi would stand in the middle of the road, pointing at the sky and shouting, "They are here! The spirits are here! Can't you see them?" He would laugh hysterically, clutching his head as if trying to block out the voices. Other times, he would cry uncontrollably, collapsing to his knees and begging for forgiveness. "Mama, I am sorry, forgive me." He would wail, his voice breaking. One evening, as the sun set and the village prepared for the night, Femi's antics took a darker turn. He climbed onto the roof of a shop, shouting incoherently. Villagers gathered below, unsure of what to do. "Femi, calm down," someone shouted, but he only laughed. "You can't stop them. They are everywhere," he yelled before jumping down, landing awkwardly but unharmed. He picked up his stick and began chasing the crowd, his laughter echoing as people scattered in fear. Through it all, Mama Femi never abandoned her son. She braved the ridicule of the villagers and the danger of his outbursts. Every day, she brought him food, searching the streets and alleys until she found him. There were days he'd chase her away, screaming at her to leave. "You are one of them, go away," he would yell, waving his stick. Other days, she couldn't find him at all, and she would return home, heartbroken, only to pray fervently for his safety and healing. Femi's descent into madness was more than a punishment. It was a reminder of the cost of greed and betrayal. The villagers continued to gossip, but Mama Femi remained resolute in her love and prayers, believing that her son could still be redeemed. Every day, Mama Femi brought food to Femi, even when he chased her away or threatened her. On days she couldn't find him, she searched tirelessly, her heart breaking, but her faith unshaken. One day, Femi knelt in the forest where it all began, with tears streaming down his face. He cried out, "God, forgive me!" Unknown to him, his mother had been fasting and praying for his deliverance. Slowly, Femi began to regain his sanity. He returned home a changed man, confessing everything to his mother. She embraced him, her tears a mix of relief and sorrow. "You are still my son," she whispered. Femi now spends his days sharing his story, warning others about the dangers of greed and the power of a mother's love. Moral of the story. Number 1. Greed destroys lives. Femi's desire for wealth led to his downfall. 2. A mother's love is unconditional. Despite everything, Mama Femi never gave up on her son. 3. Ill-gotten wealth comes with a heavy price. Please like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.